Good morning, everyone, or afternoon or evening. I guess it depends. I guess you're all over the place. Welcome to another episode of UXR Conversations. I think it's 11 or 12. I'm not even sure anymore. Does it matter? It's just a number. In case you don't know me, I'm Noam Siegel. I'm Director of Youth Research at Wellfront. And I do some other things, such as have YouTube conversations with some incredible researchers and research leaders. And today I'm really honored and glad to have Christian Stovall, who is the Director of CX and UX Research at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, ALSAC. Welcome, Christian.
Thank you, Noam. Thank you. Glad to be here.
We are going to talk about a topic I'm always happy to discuss, which is alternatives to NPS. And maybe more importantly, we'll talk about what you're trying to measure given where you work and kind of what sort of metrics are important to you. But first, I'd like to introduce you for a bit and kind of, I like to embarrass people a little with some tidbits of information. So you're currently at St. Jude's ALSAC, which is, it's probably the most well-known, incredible pediatric research hospital, maybe in the world. I'm just in awe of the work that goes on at St. Jude's, and I'm very happy for you that you got the chance to be there. And I'd love to hear about how you got there in a sec. But you've done a bunch of other things as well. You've worked in design and digital agencies. You've worked in fintech for a bit in the past as well, right? So we share a bit of the fintech background. And in terms of what you studied philosophy and religious studies and art.
That's right.
Is that true?
That's right.
Which is always, it's just amazing to me, the endless paths that researchers and research leaders take on their way to becoming researchers. Did you think you were going to be a researcher when you were younger?
Oh, no, not at all. I thought for sure that I would be an artist or a doctor. Those were sort of the two leading ones. I think one was for my heart and one was for my parents. But no, that was never a something that I had laid out to be. I think like most people, you go to university with different goals and objectives. Some people think of it as a trade school. I went there to learn. I really wanted to understand a topic and a way of thinking that appealed to me. But some people know very early on. I think, like yourself, if I know enough about your history to speak to it, I think that you went to you had the opportunity to go to a very interesting school in Israel, and then to take that further to your advanced coursework in the States. And so, for some people, that multi-year, master's PhD commitment is very much this is where I want to be and what I want to do. But I did not follow that track. So I really my arrival into financial technology or fintech was really, I like to say, I was sort of forged in the fires of Wall Street. Like that was where I began. I was in New York, fully intending to go to the Culinary Institute in Hyde Park, New York. And while I was waiting to start that program, I worked I was offered a position to work in a trading floor for Citibank in Long Island City, and on a support desk. And in that 6-month period, while I was waiting for my culinary class to start, I got exposed to all this just remarkable engineering and technology. And I mean, you have experience in financial technology. You know that they have the means and the intellectual horsepower to do a lot of amazing things with technology. And I just was fascinated at what I saw, and I was equally fascinated at the gap between the brilliant people that were building all these technical solutions and then the people that were intended to use these technical solutions. And I just saw this chasm that just was an enormous opportunity of surely we can shorten this gap a little bit. Surely there's a way to, and that's what threw this spark up for me. And I had the good fortune of being surrounded by really smart people who were interested in mentoring me and helping me develop my technical chops, because I hadn't had any formal training in that. So that's sort of my origin story. And I spent quite a bit of time, nearly 15 years working in financial technology, being involved in a financial technology startup, getting acquired by a larger company, and do some very esoteric technology work around financial risk assessment and really complex instrument modeling and just things I'd never imagined I would do. And then I had this opportunity to work for this remarkable organization, which was a complete opposite from Wall Street, and just leapt at it. So that's where I am today.
Can I ask you, do you still feel like you bring anything from those early studies in philosophy and religion and art to your work today, or do you feel like you left it behind you and it's not really an influence on the way you think anymore?
I think I probably draw on the philosophical studies a bit more than because there was also very much a religious studies component. The philosophy helped me with a way of thinking, I think, that still I carry into the day to day, and my team does as well. Is this just being, if nothing else, just being particularly mindful of the sort of the biases that are at play in all of us every day, and how that can improve or not the work that we do. That's something that is I wasn't really that aware of before I took those courses at university, and that's definitely persisted. In our line of work, we work for a nonprofit pediatric cancer research hospital, and so it does, as you mentioned, it does great things, and it's an honor to work for this organization. I mean, there are brilliant minds doing fantastic research at this organization, and because of that, the people that we talk to are customers. We call them supporters. There are many names for them. There's very much a social desirability bias at play when we're talking to these folks about helping us understand ways that we can be a better fundraising organization, whether that's something that we do by the things that they tell us in person, or things that they tell us like in our NPS responses that maybe we'll talk about later. They tend to speak in a way that makes them not look like they are disparaging, this wonderful pediatric cancer research facility. And so we not being aware of those types of things, I think is something that being aware of those types of things, something I'm thankful for, of being able to know that it's simple little adjustments around how we frame questions and inquiry to be asking these wonderful folks that give us their time about, well, how might you design this fundraising tool for your neighbor, or your sister, and getting them into a place where they're more comfortable or willing to say things that they might not otherwise. So I've carried that along the most. I definitely think that the art training, though, that I had and just my interest in design, it's helped quite a bit. I think it's helped me. It certainly helped me earlier in my career, and I appreciate things like a healthy critique. I really enjoy low fidelity prototyping. That's always been a great pastime of mine, or favorite pastime of mine. So that does persist a bit. But now that I'm in more of a leadership role, it's a bit more critical thinking and less about pixels.
When I want to feel good about myself, I call my shitty designs ultra low fidelity prototypes.
That's great.
Because I can't do anything besides maybe like stick figures or something. So, but again, it's not shitty design; it's ultra low fidelity prototyping. That's right. What I'm up for.
You're saving money. That's what you're doing. Yeah,
exactly. So before we jump into metrics and NPS, which is a always a welcome topic for me. I would like to understand a little bit better what your role is at and your team's role at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, ALSAC. Also, what is ALSAC within St. Jude's, and who are you trying to understand in your day-to-day? Who are these supporters or other things you call them?
Yeah,
Give
for
us
sure.
some context.
Yeah. So some context. So my job is to raise funds and awareness for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and their mission to find cures and to save children. And I work for basically a partner organization that was created at the same time that St. Jude was founded, called ALSAC. So we're the $1.9 billion fundraising organization that raises the funds and awareness for the hospital. That's our only job. We have around about 1,500 employees, 33 offices around the country. We have around 11 million customers. We call them supporters. We have about 1 million volunteers, and we put on around 31,000 fundraising events each year to raise the roughly give or take $3 million a day it takes to run this facility. So at ALSAC, I direct customer and user experience research. And so our job is to, at a high level, it's to help the teams that are charged with raising funds and awareness to help them find new and improved customer experience opportunities, to be very quick and effective at testing and implementing different solutions that our teams come up with, technical and non-technical. And then we also work to help measure the outcomes of those solutions, and then the resulting business impact. The team that I run sits within the customer experience department. We call it donor experience, because of the nature of our business. It was established by Martin Hand, and he is our chief customer officer who came over from United Airlines. Martin has been a tremendous contribution to our practice of customer experience. He brings an expectation that we will do customer experience and user experience research with the same rigor that you do your financial accounting. And so we try very hard to invest the work that my team does around customer and user experience research to be valid and reliable. Those are our goals. And so that's, yeah, I see you taking a breath. Yeah, that's no small task.
No, I'm taking a breath because this may be the perfect segue to talk about tools like NPS, which, in my personal view, which does not reflect yours or St. Jude's or Wealthfront's, to be clear, just me, no one else. NPS is one of the tools that is the most lacking in rigor, in validity, in reliability that I've ever seen in my career. But I imagine, since we're talking about alternatives to NPS, I imagine you have tried or you've used it in the past.
For sure. Yeah. So when I joined when I took over the director of research job a little over 3 years ago, we were and under our chief customer officer's direction, we were very much invested in trying to get a read on the health of the relationship that our customers have with us, our supporters have with us, and how that connects to profit and growth for our business. I mean, we need to understand that so that we can nurture the relationships of the people that are not particularly happy with what we're doing or what we've done. And so, that was very much a framework that was in place. It still is in place. And I would say that it's, alone in and of itself, it's certainly helped the organization continue to be more donor focused, in that it forces us to have conversations about the sorts of things that are delighting and frustrating our supporters. Even though NPS is referred to as the ultimate question, it's really two questions, and we spend a lot of time trying to make sense of the first question, the likeliness to recommend, by reading and mining and trying to code and understand the well, why did you give us that number? And so I came into a program that had a very strong qualitative, but also a very strong quantitative capability. We have a large contingent of research teams within the organization. I am not the only one, or we are not the only one. We have a center of excellence in analytics. We have marketing research. We have prospect research and data science team. So a lot of smart people are looking at this and trying to find the why of this mega what number that has been probably sold, not bought, into so many corporations as, really the ultimate and only number that you need to be tracking.
Yeah.
And
go ahead. Let me ask you something. I'm curious if, in the context of the sort of work you do, you find that donors, your customers or supporters, that they do recommend donating to St. Jude's. They do recommend that to their friends or colleagues, etc. I'm asking because, just from my personal experience, I don't tend to base my donation decisions on, people recommending them to me, and I certainly don't tend to recommend giving to any particular organization. Rather, I do my research, and I also try to use platforms for that. One of them was built by someone I know, and so I'm just wondering, from what you know, how common is it for donors to refer other donors? Is that an important behavior for you to be tracking?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's what Bain and the Reichhelds of the world would tell us that we need to be, that is going to be accurately reflecting the strengths and weaknesses of our relationship, and that it's related directly to our growth and profit. And so that's why we have it and are using it and are reporting out on it and are trying to make sense of it. But the power of that, if I could call it an attitudinal framework, not to sound too inside baseball, but we don't, it doesn't behave as expected for us. And that's been a real breakthrough in a sense, that it's a bit of a relief to know that there is in fact probably no one number that will tell you everything you want to know about the relationship quality of your customer and what they have with your organization and how it relates to your profits. And ultimately, I have to give credit to to my CEO and to my chief customer officer of being fully supportive in us, measuring what matters, right? They're not setting us out to say you gotta. They're not leading with method, really, which is refreshing. Their goal is to understand how we can best understand the strength or weakness of the relationship that our customers have with us, and what we can do to improve it. And if what you're using to diagnose that is not accurate, then you need to find something else. And so that's the journey we've been on recently. I'd love to be able to tell you more about why these numbers are the way they are, and the reasons that they're happening this way, and what we can do about them. But we're just simply not able to do that, and that's been a real revelation for us. I mean, to what you described. So in your personal, it sounds like you, in addition to maybe, you probably have some other way, if at all, of recommending or having conversations with folks about philanthropy if it ever comes up. But the majority of the people that support our organization just tell us that they don't recommend charities to other people. They don't tell people where to spend their money. So yep. Do you believe them, or do you believe this rather odd way of scoring, this 0 to 10 scale, or this 11-point scale that Bain's created? I think that's a fair question.
I tend to believe them, and I believe that even if NPS were a better metric than it is, it's doubtful that it could be applied in any context. most of the people I've had on this random YouTube show I do are not working in a context similar to yours. They're not working in an incredible hospital that offers free services for children with cancer.
Right.
And 2 days ago, I got an NPS question from Reuters. And Reuters asked me, how likely are you to recommend us to a friend or a colleague? And the first thing I did is include a link to npsistheworst.com. Please check it out if you haven't yet. And the second thing I wrote is, I don't recommend news services to friends or colleagues. I just don't talk about those things with my friends.
Yeah, it's a strange model. I mean, when you have, and I'm interested in, I think you're a bit more of an expert on this topic, given your training background about the validity and reliability of instruments like this, and I don't know if the Minnesota multiphasic falls into something like this, but there are lots of proven and arguably more reliable ways of diagnosing things that have to do with human beings, and is NPS really the best thing? But yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I mean, it's a thought experiment for people. You're asking them about future behavior, which people are terrible at predicting. I mean, they just really are not reliable. And what you're asking them is not, are you going to stay loyal? Because that is what you're trying to read. You're trying to read the likelihood that this person's going to stay around, and you think that by them telling you what they could do in the future with others, in terms of recommending to you, is a proxy. So it's a very interesting construct, just at the outset, and then the scoring. Yep. I mean, we have people that give us, I love your organization. Here's a 7, and if you know anything about NPS scores, I mean, that's trash. And that's, it's a very strange thing. And I'm just glad that, we've been given the latitude to explore and to work to continually improve the work that we do, and the research services that we provide the organization. That includes looking at how we instrument, and what it is that we say that we can actually, reliably report out in terms of the attitudes of our supporters.
Yeah, totally. Look, I mean, again, I could imagine never referring anyone or recommending anyone donate to St. Jude's and still have an incredibly strong relationship with it. For me, and I'm sure you hear this all the time, my life, just like most of our lives, has been affected by cancer. I've lost many family members and friends to cancer. My wife has lost people to cancer. Our firstborn, our daughter, is named after my grandmother who passed away from cancer, among sadly many. And my neighbor, my good neighbor, Faith, is a registered nurse in a pediatric oncology unit at Stanford. So, I have an incredibly strong relationship with, the sort of work that you do and your organization. And full disclosure, I have donated to St. Jude's in the past as well. But I can imagine, that can all be true, and yet I'm not going to talk to other people about it, because I philosophically do not believe in doing that. But let me ask you, if we can kind of transition to talking about alternatives and what we should be doing. One question I have for you is around, let's call it secondary research. So I'm kind of wondering how unique you think, or whether your organization, you feel like it's unique in terms of how you should be measuring the health of relationship with donors. For example, I went to grad school at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and a good friend of mine from that time is the executive director of the Hillel on campus. the Center for Jewish Life on campus, and he's one of the most amazing fundraisers I've ever met in my life. Incredibly talented. Is the way he should be thinking of the relationship health with his donors fundamentally different than the way you should be thinking of it, given the difference in what you do, or not, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Noam. I think I would agree that when you enter into the world of philanthropy, that you have to be a bit more cautious about how you are weighting the attitudes of the people that you have the ability to speak to and hear from. I do think that I guess more generally, I would say I probably would put a little bit more value in the behavior of the people that you're doing business with versus their attitudes per se, given just the uniqueness of a nonprofit's operating model, versus a for-profit company. I guess more generally, what we think of when we sort of frame it that way, or try to think about what's unique about understanding supporters or customers in this context, is that it just really reinforces the need to triangulate your data. It's not professionally responsible to rely on a single number to gauge anything. And I think that so we try very hard to take the confirmation or the positive things that we see, and an affirmative response that we might see in an attitudinal measure. We want to most certainly triangulate with behavior as well, and other sources, but primary and secondary sources. So I think if anything, for us, it just reinforces the need to collect multiple sources of data from as many different people as possible, as quickly and as practically as possible, and factor that all in together. I was just going to say that for us with Net Promoter Score, we just had so many challenges with it. It's really forced us to look just to test elsewhere. And we've been fortunate that we've been able to do enough of a real hard look at what it does, and more importantly, doesn't tell us. We've talked enough to our supporters, and I think we have a good enough read to know that there are other ways for us to understand the loyalty, because that's what we're going for here. Our job is to serve the customers that we have, and to keep them happy, to keep them staying around. We're not the switching costs that are associated with a charity are much lower than for a cell phone provider, or even like a wealth management company like yours. It's very easy just to walk across the street to another charity. It's a lot easier to do that than to pull all your money out of your your brokerage account and put it into another company. So we are really mindful of getting as many different perspectives on our customers, and not really weighting this one magic number that we're told is going to be the keys to the kingdom. That makes sense.
And so are you able to share some information about these alternatives or things you've been exploring? Kind of what are the characteristics, the nature of a healthy donor relationship? And I'm also wondering, by the way, I am invested in finding alternatives to NPS. And it sounds like if you have found some interesting alternatives that show potential, I'm wondering if you could, at some point, almost, is open source the right term? Kind of open source that solution to help other nonprofits all over the world build healthy relationships with their donors. I'm not aware of a great NPS alternative specifically for non-profits. And if a healthy donor relationship is fairly standard? Like there aren't huge differences between St. Jude's and maybe a nonprofit that isn't a hospital. I think it could be an incredible contribution from your team if you were able to open source any of that work, but I'm not sure if that's a possibility, and I would understand if you couldn't. So
yeah, so I can answer that in two ways. So the short answer is it's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
But we're moving forward like we're right, but we're testing like we're wrong.
That's great.
But what you described is entirely our end goal, and we do that because it's the right thing to do. We believe it is a model of behavior that it's a way of our modeling behavior that is the same that goes on in the hospital that we raise funds and awareness for. And many people may not be aware of this, but in addition to all of the pediatric cancer research that we do, everything that is all of the discoveries, all of the research breakthroughs, all of the genomic sequencing, literally everything that is learned, and all the advancements that are made at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital are shared with the scientific community for free. There is no trademark to the therapies that we develop, or the pharmaceuticals that we develop, or combination therapies, or any of those things. And so there is no reason why we should treat this this simple instrument that we use to get a better understanding of the quality of the relationship that our supporters have with us any differently. And you're right. I mean, this is something that need not be confined to the for-profit industries of the world. We're not the only organization that has people that give it time and money and want to develop and nurture those relationships so that they stay around and have a lifetime of support with us. We believe it's a good cause to be a part of, and we deliver great value for money, if there is such a thing. We give people a lot of opportunity to support, to bring their families along. We believe that the work that we do taps into a lot of very meaningful intrinsic motivations that people have, and we can help satisfy those in any number of ways. So yeah, I think it might be a little premature for me to go into too much detail now, but I'd love to at some point, either with you or part of maybe something else. I don't know what it might be, but our goal is to share this with the world at large and to partner with other sister charities in a similar vein, and to make this become a nice alternative. I think that for all the things that we may say disparagingly against Net Promoter Score, I mean, I think that the motivation there is right. Like, I don't think that what Reichheld set out to do was flawed in its motivation, but if it's not measuring what you need it to, then you need to be intellectually honest and move on to something else. And that's kind of what we're hoping to do. And we're looking forward to sharing more of that with the rest of the world if we can.
That's great. And all I'll say is I would be honored and consider myself hugely privileged to collaborate with you on that sort of work, as a volunteering opportunity to create better metrics for nonprofits and help build those healthier relationships. So definitely feel free to be in touch with me. I would truly be honored. It's the least I could do. Do you have a sense then of, you talk about behaviors, I think incorporating attitudes, behaviors, emotions, the various aspects of human cognition and behavior. I think it's so valuable in research in general. Some of us call this triangulation, right? Triangulating various sources of information to get to get closer to the truth we're looking for.
Right.
Do you have a sense of behaviors that do create healthier relationships? For example, is it the case that attending some of these tens of thousands of events you put on each year does help build healthier relationships? Are there other things you're starting to to see or experience?
Yeah, I think that we're fortunate enough to have the support of our organization to be able to invest the time to listen to our supporters with enough frequency and with enough depth that we have got a pretty good idea about how people orient themselves with philanthropy as individuals or parents. We've done enough foundational research to know what the sort of overarching journey is for supporters and those various stages. And we know what the moments of truth are that we want to really get right to help ensure that they continue to support our organization and continue to stay involved. I will say that it's interesting and I think there's some analog to finance here as well, in that people, and of course I'm a bit biased because my background is from enterprise financial service software. So the comparison I'm trying to make is that when I worked in financial services building enterprise software for financial planning and analysis and then risk analysis and so on, like my job didn't require me to spend a lot of time to understand the motivations of the audience that I was working for. It was focused largely on ability factors, and I love, and one of the things that I loved about your conversation with Steve Portugal, where you talked about the weapons defense system development, like and I read a little bit about that. It's fascinating. I mean, you're talking about a system, if it's the one that you worked on, that's like, a 2 mile to 42 mile window of incoming artillery and missiles that you have to be making very quick decisions on. And you're not really thinking so much about, well, how do I motivate the operator to, that's just not something that happens. Right. And the same in finance. Like, I'm not thinking about how to motivate the risk officer to do the necessary reporting he has to, or the broker to, make that sale. And the comparison I'm trying to make is that with us, because of the fantastic work that the organization does, it's a nonprofit. So no profit motive at all. It's a research facility. So it's trying to find ways to benefit humanity overall, and it's doing that with really hard science. It's children, it's cancer. It appeals to an enormous audience of people, and so in our work, what we're finding is that the vast majority of usually the best way for us to look at improving the relationship with our supporters is to really just make it easy for them to support us. I mean, that seems to be the sort of the North Star for what it means to develop and nurture a healthy relationship. So we focus a lot of time on understanding, what's the most finite resource at any given time that our supporters might have when we need them to do something for us. Like, how much time do they have to listen to this message that we have about a fundraising event in their area? Or how complicated are the instructions that we have for them for the security protocols for our upcoming event that we're now doing in certain areas where local and state restrictions allow? Or how easy can we make it for someone to donate online, using their thumb? I mean, these are the types of things these ability factors that we focus a lot on, as well as the triggers of when is the best time to let people know that there's an opportunity for them to support us or to thank them. And that's very much where we spend a lot of time, is when is the right time to thank the people that support us, and in what way and where. Our CEO and our chief experience officer and certainly our chief customer officer spend a lot of time talking about the value of meeting people where they are. And it's not just meeting people where they are with these products and service announcements and how can we get you to give us your contact information, but meeting people where they are to thank them and to let them know that we appreciate what they do for us. And that includes the feedback that they give us. That really truly helps us be a better fundraising organization.
I love that. There's so much to unpack there, but one thing I took away from what you just said is around, in survey science, we have the term a ceiling effect, right? Where everyone answers a question kind of so high, a 5 out of 5, that there's no variance in the answer. And
Right.
what you were talking about is essentially, this is cancer research, children, everyone's motivated.
Right.
Like, who isn't motivated to help that sort of cause?
Right.
And that's not the issue. The issue is friction. Friction in being able to be helpful. I still remember not so long ago that platforms like GoFundMe and those sorts of platforms, I would often want to give some money to a cause, but I would be logging in through Facebook or something, and then it wouldn't let me log in, and it would ask me to do something else. And then I didn't have my wallet on me, and it wouldn't autofill with my details because it didn't support that or something. And I'm a little embarrassed to say, but it's just the truth, that it would prevent me from actually completing the donation and actually becoming a supporter of that cause, which is terrible, because these were important causes. And it did not take much friction for me to say, you know what, I'm just going to move on to the next item on my to-do list today. And all of that has so little to do, again, with how likely I am to talk about this cause with another person. And so I love that you're recognizing those things. And I have some ideas for you also that we can talk about afterwards around just reducing that friction. I also, another thing I heard from you, which is interesting, is that research has really advanced when it comes to understanding people's journeys. One of the issues with surveys is that they reflect a very specific moment in time, typically a state of mind and being that people were at in a particular moment.
Right.
Part of the beauty of things like diary studies, especially kind of the modern diary study, which is very mobile first, and you can trigger it based on certain things, is that you can follow people where they are. Literally, you can trigger things based on GPS if you need to, and get a much clearer picture of their journey as supporters, as donors, or whatever it is. And that is, I imagine, potentially much more useful to you than a random measurement of how likely someone is to recommend donating to St. Jude's.
Yeah, or how likely they say they are, right? I mean, this self-reported estimate of future behavior. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we've been fortunate to be able to do diary studies in some of our with some of our fitness fundraisers, so that people that we put on a lot of marathons and other events, and we've always wanted to understand, how similar or different that experience is for people who are maybe principally interested in fitness activity and the self-development that comes from that, paired with the responsibility of fundraising and letting their folks know that they work with, their friends and family, how to get them to support them and things. And the diary studies have helped us understand how well the information that we provide them to be effective fundraisers, and then the additional information that we provide them about how to be outstanding athletes, how those things fit into their day-to-day, what about them help bring them closer to the organization, help them feel like they're more effective fundraisers and things like that. Those give us much more insights, and I would say our team is, on the whole, probably more inclined to the thick descriptions that come from that, as Geertz would refer to, and try to get those deep understandings of where we fit, because again, we're not so much concerned with, we want people to be aware of what we do, but what we do has broad appeal. So a deep understanding of how it fits, and less about how we generalize the response of this one moment in time that we got from a survey for some sort of future predictability of behavior is something we just, I think, put a little less value into. We're also very deliberate about when we do collect feedback from people. If it does come through a survey, and we have found that surveys by email, for example, are more candid than the feedback we'll get over the phone. We try very hard to get that information very quickly and only instrument certain touch points where we increase the likelihood of that happening. And it's a real moment of truth for us, because if we're trying to get feedback from people, I mean, you know this, I mean, the person's ability to recall the past deteriorates very quickly, at least to recall it accurately. So if we don't get feedback from people within 24 to 48 hours, it's probably not the value of that data drops quickly. So yeah, we also consider the limitations of that more transactional moment in time. How was this thing versus you're in a relationship with us and we're in a relationship with you, and we both want to do this wonderful work for this hospital. So tell us more about the day-to-day. And like you say, the technology nowadays has made that significantly easier. We're not shipping disposable cameras and notepads anymore. We're having people very eagerly, particularly in the as our donor audience becomes more and more of a population of people that have never not known the internet, that have never not had a smartphone. The idea of talking to their phone about a particular piece of material that we've sent them or some sort of gift giving, we can get that feedback very quickly, and we find that information to be much richer and helps us get a much better understanding of our customers and their needs. And I think we find that that deep understanding is a much better substitute for prediction in most cases.
As we come close to an end, I'd love to ask you one more question, which is just what are you most excited about for the future of your team, of the work you're doing, of St. Jude's Research Hospital, ALSAC in general? I'd just love to hear a little bit about what you're looking forward to for the rest of this year and beyond.
I think what gets me the most excited is that we have a team that has a research team and several research teams that have the support and commitment and investment from our executive leadership team to continue to do this work well, to be rigorous in the way that we understand the behaviors and the attitudes of our supporters and how we can help positively affect that for the benefit of the hospital. And I'm excited that research is going on all the time and everywhere. I mean, everyone in our organization is focused on trying to involve our supporters earlier and more often in the programs and services that we design. And so for our team, our capital R researchers, to be able to support these people who do research and help them with, basic concepts around like validity and the necessary steps of like research design and leading with goals before you talk about research methods, helping these folks that are all trying to do the same thing, that are all pushing towards the same goal, just to help them do that part of their job a little bit better. And then overall, I mean, our organization has doubled in size in the last 10 years. And I think that that's a testament both to the amazing work that's happening at the hospital and the profound support that organizations and individuals like you give to the cause. And so I'm excited to be able to help our product and service teams get closer and closer to our supporters, to help build more products and services, to help connect folks to our organization, and to continue to raise those funds and awareness for the hospital.
Amazing. We do have one question from the audience, if you still have time. First of all, Anna mentioned appreciating the conversation, and thank you, Anna, for that. She also mentioned that this reminds her of donation emails from other organizations such as universities, and they also have a good way to improve. Kelly mentions that she's really proud of you and your team and what you do. Thank you, Kelly, for your lovely feedback. And Anna just had one question, which was just around, I think among other things, what you've done in this conversation is inspire people to work at incredible nonprofits that are changing this world for the better. And people are asking themselves, what's the most challenging or different part of doing UX research in a nonprofit versus a profit organization? And do we need any change of mindset? So thank you, Anna, for the question. What do you think? What's the biggest challenge or difference?
Yeah, I guess the first thing that comes to mind, and this is probably an unfair advantage, but our nonprofit is just such that, and I guess there are others like this, but when I worked in finance, it was not uncommon to have professional researchers on staff. I mean, that was something that they were able to invest in because of the competitive advantage that it provides. The return on investment for customer-led initiatives is significantly higher if you've got people like that that are focused on those sorts of things. And nonprofits are no different. Our organization, being a nearly $2 billion organization, we are of such a scale with 11 million supporters that we have the means to build teams to do this and to help professionalize the service. So I think that is, again, perhaps an unfair advantage of doing this type of work within nonprofit organizations. It's certainly one of the reasons why I came to work here, is because they have the means. That said, I do think that it is something that every organization to do, nonprofit or otherwise, the only challenge other than just the means to staff a team or to focus on work of this type, as opposed to everything that you would do in the other day. I think that the challenge that you have to have, that I think that is most affects nonprofits, is the probably the challenge it is to get critical feedback about the work that you do. I think people are reluctant to be particularly critical about causes. I think it's one thing to tell your airline that you despise their reservation service and that the last trip you had was a nightmare and you're never going to fly.
The Wi-Fi on the plane.
Right. That expectation that we've always had. Right. But when you're talking about, a nonprofit organization and a cause that you're trying to get people familiar with and to support, that candid feedback can be a challenge. And so we've had interesting approaches to that, where we've white labeled some of the products and services that we did. We did a long prototyping process of a payment system for fundraisers to use when in the field doing fundraising collection for us. And we got most of the insights that we could by doing it in camouflage, basically. Instead of coming out talking about, can you give us feedback about this product we're doing for St. Jude, we created this fictional nonprofit called Kyle's Cookies, where we were a palm oil saving inspired organization that was selling knockoffs of the Girl Scout cookies. And it was a little bit of work to make it not St. Jude, but we got a lot of candid feedback about pain points and frustrations and things like that were very insightful, because we've done before and after, and people will see something with our logo on it and say, this is just the best thing I've ever seen. And if they see the same thing without our logo on it, you get all kinds of very different candid feedback. So I would say truly try to manage the fact that people are going to try to speak in ways that make them look good or make them not look bad. And since you're going to be spending a lot of time trying to listen to people about the reason that things are happening and how to fix them, getting that candid feedback is going to be essential. So
Anna appreciates that response, and I have to say, good for you for going as far as doing something that's almost blasphemous, which is going against Girl Scout cookies. I'm sure you got a lot of candid feedback trying to compete with those people. They're crazy. They're gonna find you and take care of you if you try and compete with them.
I may have just outed myself. Yeah.
So good luck if any Girl Scout is watching this. Christian's a good person. He there's no real competition. Don't worry, you're not threatened.
Thank you.
There are no rules in this random video cast. So if there's anything you would like to plug, so to speak, please feel free to do so before we end. If there's anything you'd like to share about your team, your work, or St. Jude's, ALSAC, go ahead, and we'll end there.
Yeah, well, I would just encourage anyone who is watching or will watch that please visit stjude.org, and if you aren't already familiar with our organization, you can learn about the terrific work that we do and have done for the past 60 years, the positive effect that we've had on cancer survival rates and the research and therapies around those, domestically and internationally. We share all of the research that's developed on that campus across the world. No patient family spends $1 for treatment, travel, housing, or food. It is a fantastic organization, and I encourage you to visit stjude.org to learn more about it. And if you're interested in donating or perhaps even becoming a fundraiser for us, all the information that you would need would be there. And I thank you for your time visiting it. And thank you, Noam, very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It was wonderful to talk to you. As I noted, I rarely, if ever, recommend donations to anyone, but I just want to reiterate what you said. I think St. Jude's is an amazing organization. As a parent, I don't want to imagine what parents of children go through with cancer. It's making me emotional just thinking about it. I encourage anyone watching this now, live or later on, to go to stjudes.org and consider donating and helping out. And again, if I can help in any way to build those healthier relationships with supporters, then you, Christian, know where to find me, and I would be absolutely honored. Thank you so much for a conversation that started as about alternatives to NPS, but I think it became a lot more than that. And thank you for your inspirational work. And to everyone watching, thank you for watching. If you're looking for me, you know where to find me. These are some of the places you can find me. I'd love to be in touch. I'd love to have a conversation with you about other amazing research topics that come up. I will be back with more episodes soon. And until then, have a great rest of the week. And thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks,
for now.